Today we are so excited to announce a new product to our catalog that people have been asking for years.
And today on WTF, we're going to look at glucose powder DE42 and how to turn that powder into syrup and that syrup into something delicious like a fudge bar. Hello and welcome to WTF, where we transform food here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen. I'm Chef Scott Guerin.
And I'm Janie Wang, one of the owners of Modernist Pantry. Today, Scott and I are super excited because we get to launch a new product, which we don't get to do that often, and it's glucose DE42. And if it's your first time tuning into WTF, remember to click the link and subscribe buttons and ring the bell and do what you need to do in order to get our fresh content, because we do come out with something new and different every single Tuesday. So hopefully we're going to get you inspired to start doing some cool and unique stuff. Now, in the links in the description below, you're going to find a link to our sweeteners episode, which you've already done, and we covered a whole bunch of different sweeteners in there and how you can use them, and we have charts on our blog all about that stuff, so you can get that information. But one of the things that people have been asking for a few years now is glucose DE42. So we're really excited that now it's finally available, and we can have it in a couple of different sizes. If you just need a little or you need a lot, we can certainly help you with it. But for people who haven't encountered DE42 before, Scott, what is it?
So one of the things people also commonly call it is corn syrup solids. So you can see that on a lot of recipes, and this is actually great to replace with that because it's basically the same thing. This is made from corn, and it's a dry version of glucose syrup that you would naturally find. You can find it in any confectioner, any bakery around the country, if not the world. And it's the most commonly used one from everything from, like I said, confections to ice cream and everything to prevent crystallization.
Yeah, and for people who are not familiar with DE, can you go over a little bit, like what is DE and what is DE42 exactly?
Great, so DE stands for dextrose equivalent, and what that is how much dextrose there is per weight of the product. So with this, if you were to take 100 grams, the 42 actually stands for 42% of that 100 grams would be the dextrose equivalent. So there is 42 grams of that 100 grams is dextrose. There's other carbohydrates in there, maltose and other things to make up the rest of that. But the reason why that's important is anything below 45 is going to help with crystallization of sugars. So it's like the best way to prevent any crystallization. We actually have some examples here.
Yeah, and what can happen when you're cooking if your sugar crystallizes?
So we actually did it earlier. We just, we know how to mess things up here in the test kitchen. So we took some sugar, we made a syrup, we cooked it to softball stage, which is about 240 degrees Fahrenheit. And then if you don't brush down the sides, so if you take like a pastry brush, you dip it in some clean water and you brush the sides to get any of those little crystals. If you don't brush down the sides, your sugar can grab onto one of those crystals, and then it, as like a chain reaction, can crystallize the entire pot of sugar. So what we did there is, we did a pretty good job. Not gonna, pat myself on the back a little bit, but we then just took a little bit of sugar, we tossed it in there, and that's what happens. So you can go from something that is liquid like this, and a little bit of sugar can turn it into that. Now this is actually a finished glucose DE42 syrup, which we're actually going to demo here really quick.
Okay, so once it becomes that crystallized stage, you're basically just better off tossing the entire thing out.
Yeah, you can probably one time add water to it and start over, but after that, the more you break it down, the more you mess it up, you're not going to get the final finished product. So even, if it does get to this point, you could probably toss it and start over. But if you wanted to add a little bit of water, try it again. But there's a much easier way, is just add glucose in about like 20%. You can even go up to around 50%, and you can then not have that happen. You don't have to brush it down. You cut out a lot of like the extra little work. You can turn it on. If you have something like this, Control Freak here, I can set it to 240 degrees. I can put in my thermometer. I can go do other work.
Okay.
And when I hear that beep go off, there's glucose in there. This only comes up to 240 degrees. I come back and boom, my sugar's perfectly fine. I didn't have to stand here, or I didn't have to pay someone to stand there and watch it.
Yeah, so it sounds like a great way to kind of foolproof your recipes, foolproof your workday, so that you're not running into risk of having to encounter this. All right, so that's a huge benefit. I think especially if you're a professional like pastry chef, or you're working in a busy kitchen, never want to do that.
Yeah.
So I guess, for people who have heard of like corn syrups and like they've encountered those like buckets and like tubs of glucose syrup, how is the glucose powder different from that?
So glucose powder is good because usually with those, you are adding water to a carbohydrate, which then is a recipe for fermentation, pretty much. So with those, they have to add a lot of preservatives. And you have to buy them in 7 kilogram, 14, 15 pounds of glucose syrup, which if you're a home cook or even just a small, bakery, whatever, you don't necessarily need all that much. Right. So with this, you can make the amount that you need. We like to make about 2 quarts every, few weeks, and then we just go through it as we need it, and then we just make more. And it's really simple. It's just 80.5% of glucose powder to 19.5% of water. And if you don't want to do the percentages, you just convert that to grams. So it's 80.5 grams to 19.5 grams. And we actually have a little quick demo here, so I'll get this started. And you can see that's a very small amount of water to the amount of glucose. And you don't want to boil it. That's a big thing. So I'm just going to heat this up to about 150, 160. And I'm just going to get this going. So this is nice because you can see, if you're looking at it on the overhead, I poured in that 19.5 grams, which is a very small amount of water, and it's just starting to pull into that glucose powder already, right? And I'd have to do a very minimal stirring to get it to dissolve, but I just need to heat it up just until it'll get a little cloudy, but that's really just air that is trapped, in between the powder. But once it starts becoming a nice fluid, I'm done. I don't have to boil this because when you boil it, that water vapor comes off, and that changes the ratio.
Okay.
And also, we like to do it just really quickly. We have a Brix Meter here. We actually sell them at modernistpantry.com.
Brix meters.
Links in the description below. But we just take a little bit, we toss it on there, we make sure it's at 80.5. There may be a little variable, but 80.6 or 80.4, that's fine. But if you mess with that ratio too much, you could end up not having that perfect DE42 syrup.
Yeah.
You probably will prevent crystallization, but if you try and do 50% water, 50% this DE42, you're not going to end up with the right product. So if you try and stretch it out, you're not going to end up with that, crystallizing prevention.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions that I had, because I know some people just want to volumetrically measure.
Yes.
So I asked, can we convert this to tablespoons, and the answer was not really, if you want to make sure that it works all the time, right?
Yeah, so your tablespoon and my tablespoon could be 2 to 3 grams off, right? And if you do that for something like a cup, you could end up with an entire ounce more, and then you just don't have the right product. Yeah. Especially when you're trying to recreate something, you want to make sure that you're recreating it perfectly. So that's why we even like to just do a quick test. We pop it right on our Brix Meter, and boom, we nailed it, put it over. Or if there's a little issue, we can reheat it and we can add more and fix it. But generally, if you measure it by weight, it's going to be perfectly fine.
Yeah, so I think if you do want a scale that can measure to that 0.1 of a gram, because you're doing such a small amount, we do sell them here. But if you're doing larger amounts, obviously just make it a whole number.
Yep.
And I like kind of how you said it looks cloudy in that pan, but this bowl here is perfectly clear.
So I'm just going to let this go.
Okay.
There's a few parts that are just still melting, so I'm going to let these melt down. But after I melt it fully, I just put it into a container, and then we have this perfectly clear glucose syrup. And this is great. You can add it to ice creams, you can add it to any confection, really just replace a little bit of the sugar, especially if you're melting that sugar, just replace it with a little bit of glucose syrup. You're going to help prevent any crystallization. And we did some fudge, actually, that we're going to demo in just a few minutes.
Cool.
So sometimes fudge on the outside gets really kind of crisp, and you can see it start to get crystalline, and this will help prevent that. It's not going to indefinitely make your fudge not crystallize, but because if you leave it out, that moisture is going to go somewhere, but it's going to really help prevent it. And we made a really great fudge bar that you can do as a nice dessert for the holidays.
Okay. Now, if someone does make, let's say, 2 quarts or more of this, do you recommend storing this in the refrigerator?
No, you can keep this out on the shelf, but you don't want to keep it out on the shelf,
Forever.
Forever. If you were to put this in the refrigerator, you're going to have to take it out and you're going to have to leave it on the counter. It's going to have to come up to room temperature before it can, because this, like, I can almost lift up the bowl. If this was in the refrigerator, I would take it out and it would be very, very hard to deal with. But as long as you keep it, you know, it's in a sterile container and you just cover it, it's going to be good for at least a week out on the shelf. And then if you want to just toss it in the refrigerator, you absolutely could. But yeah, if you wanted to freeze it, and you know, if you have a recipe that you make all the time, you can measure it out, put it into little, you know, containers, and then freeze them in those containers. You can just have them exactly how much you need. That's a really common thing to do.
Yeah, that's a great way to plan ahead, isn't it?
So this is pretty good. There's a few little bits in here that need to come down, but I want to get into our second demo. So like this takes about 5 minutes or so just to really kind of melt, because I'm not heating it at a super high temperature.
Do you recommend this constant stirring that you do?
Yeah, I just have like a few little bits, like I'm seeing here, that I don't want to have in my final product. So I'm just, you know, mixing it up. It'll come together. And it's not going to be that thick until it comes down to the room temperature. But for time's sake, we're going to take it off. And it's pretty close anyways. I can just heat it up later. If you do find little clumps like that, you can just heat it back up and it's going to be fine. But for time's sake, I'm going to move into our next demo. And actually here, we've already heated up our glucose syrup, our sugar, and our cream. So I'm going to bring this back up to temperature. I'll turn my control freak up to 240. And you can see, right, it's very nice and thick. There's sugar in there. It's not sticking to the sides. It's not crystallizing. I just turned this on and let it go for a little while. And what we're going to add to this when it starts to come up to temperature is we're going to add brown butter and peanut butter. So we're making a peanut butter fudge here.
Great.
We actually made an Instagram video where we do this entire recipe. So we make the peanut butter fudge, and then we take some tempered chocolate. If you don't want a tempered chocolate at home, we understand. Just melt it gently. And our honeycomb recipe that's on the blog, we took and we broke it up. So honeycomb is a really nice, like, it can be used as a garnish. It's a really, it actually uses glucose as well. So the glucose that's in there is our other glucose powder. But you can substitute it out for the glucose DE42 as well. And we did that just to test it out. And you make this really puffed, beautiful honeycomb structure of sugar. And then we take that, we grind it up, and we mix it with the chocolate. So you have like this really crispy chocolate. And then we garnish it with some salt, some banana chips, some roasted peanuts, a few cocoa nibs, and we made a really nice little peanut butter chocolate bar. And we wanted it to taste like the best either Reese's cup, you know, a peanut butter cup that we could. You know, it's a slightly salty, chocolatey, but we wanted to add some texture to it. So when we make this, I mean, Janie, if you wanted to try one, I understand.
They cut me off a little baby piece here. But this is good.
So as Janie's trying that, I have the melted brown butter and peanut butter that I'm just going to mix right in. Just mix this right up, and once it's homogeneous, I'm just going to mix it, or I'm going to pour it into my mold, and I'll let it set. You don't have to take any plastic wrap and press it down over the top.
Yeah, this does taste, I would say, like, and I love Reese's peanut butter cups. It tastes like a Reese's peanut butter cups, but like kicked up a notch.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, we should just flip this upside down. Like, no, it is a Reese's peanut butter cup.
So yes, we wanted to make just like a really nice chocolate peanut butter bar.
So good.
And the fudge makes for a really, because this has a slightly high salt content. We did add salt in before. And then we put a little bit of nice French gray salt on top of those bars, and just a little bit goes a long way, but that's really nice little treat to have. You know, put them out on the table.
It's great for the holidays when you just want to have some sweets that people can just grab and like
So I have this fudge here. And one of the things also about the DE42 syrup is that it is not as sweet as table sugar. So when you're replacing some of that sugar, you're also kind of lowering the sweetness of it, which is nice, because a lot of the times, and we said it around here, like, how do we make fudge a little bit more flavorful and a little less sweet? Because it's so, you know, strikingly sweet that we didn't really want that. We wanted full flavor, so we did, you know, brown the butter. We have the peanut butter in there. We up the salt content, and then we use the glucose syrup as well, and quite a high ratio, maybe about 35%.
Okay.
So that it kind of cuts down on that sweetness.
All right. So now the fudge is in. How long would you want this to? I guess until it's hard, or
yeah. So I would
specific?
just pop it in the refrigerator. You can even just leave it out on the counter, and it'll be fine until you have to coat it with the chocolate. Or if you just wanted peanut butter fudge, you could just take this and then make peanut butter fudge.
That was pretty good too, because we
Yeah,
ate it straight as well. So that was super tasty.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you've been kind of looking for a way to kind of have access to glucose DE42, hopefully you're really excited to see this video, because I know I've been getting calls and emails from people asking about it. Give it a shot. As always, like all of our links will be in the description below. If you do want to see Scott make the whole bar on Instagram, it's at Modernist Pantry, so follow us. We do like videos and stuff all the time. And it is exciting. And anything else you want to leave the folks with before we wrap up?
No, I think we pretty much said it all.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, one thing, because it's a common question. It is made from corn, so glucose is made from corn. Sometimes people ask, like, what's it made from? It is made from corn.
Yes.
Just like pretty much all glucose. And
Yeah. Yep. So it is made from corn, but that doesn't change anything about it. It still works the same way as the rest. So maybe we did say it was corn syrup solid.
Yeah, that's right. We did say that. Never mind. Never mind. So, so start cooking and leave your comments below. We love to hear what you're doing. Always tag us in whatever you make. People have been doing that, and it's so wonderful to like just see what people come up with. You're all super creative. It's wonderful.
Yes.
So from here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen, I'm Janie Wang.
And I'm Scott Guerin. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. And turn that bell on because it notifies you when we drop a new video.
If you like any of today's recipes, go to blog.modernistpantry.com. There you'll find recipes, Ask a Chefs, and tips and tricks, and more.
And if you have a friend who you think would like this video, share it with them.
And to get any of these great ingredients, just go to our website, www.modernistpantry.com.
And until next time, we'll be here in the Test Kitchen, helping you create memorable and magical experiences.